Well, let's get into it because there's so much wonderful content. And to those listening, this is going to be some tough stuff. We're going to cover great material this time and next time, and it's going to be good material, but also some tough topics like adultery and pornography and some of those really hard issues that we need to think through. But let's start with the overarching narrative here. You mention a term, reality living, in your book. What do you mean by reality living, and how does it apply?
Well, Jim, what I'm trying to do in this book, because as you said, we're dealing with heavy-duty issues in this book, not just little things, but huge things in a marriage. And I find that so many times we have a mindset in those kind of marriages that this is not going to work. It's gone on too long. They're not going to change. Those kind of things.
Well, is that a coping mechanism for some people to say, okay, there's not much changing here; it won't change?
I think it's a way of giving us an out in our own minds that since it is so bad and it's gone on so long, then I can get out of here with grace, and dignity. And I'm not saying that all marriages can be saved. Don't hear me saying that. But I do believe that many, many people give up in those difficult marriages, which if they had a different perspective on things, which I'm calling reality living, they could be an influencer. It is true we can't change our spouse. We can't make them change, but we can influence them. Right. And we do every single day, either negatively or positively. Yeah. And so I'm trying to talk about if you take the right approach to things, which I'm calling reality, and we can look into those elements.
We're going to.
Then you're far more likely to have a positive influence on your spouse, and then they change because you've influenced them.
Right. Reality living, maybe another way of saying that is knowing the truth, right? That is what you're saying. Know what's true about you, know what's true about your spouse. Well, let's get into some of those myths that you mentioned in the book. What truths must we cling to as we're relating to our spouses? What are those things?
Well, I think we have to, first of all, acknowledge these common myths, and we don't often perceive them as myths, but they are. One is that my environment determines my state of mind, or my spouse determines my well-being. So if I have an alcoholic husband, then I'm going to have a miserable life.
What's the difference between determine and reality? I mean, it's real that they're an alcoholic in that moment.
Absolutely, and that influences us, but it doesn't determine whether I'm going to have a positive life or a negative life.
That's in you.
That's in me. I determine that, And a second one is that people cannot change. And that's a very common perception. It's a myth that people cannot change. Look at biographies, and you will find people live terrible lives for 30 years, and then they met God, and their life was totally changed. St. Augustine is an example of that. He lived an awful life, and yet he became one of the saints in the church.
Right. But there, it's early in the discussion, Gary, but I'm thinking of that woman screaming back right now at us saying, but you don't know my husband.
Yeah.
So speak to her.
Yeah, and that's the common perception, that my situation is a different situation. That some
or the
marriages,
worst.
That some situations are hopeless, and mine is one of them. And I'm empathetic with that. I understand how you can feel that way when something has gone on for a long, long time. But chances are, if you look back over that long, long time, your response has been basically the same through all these years. Their lifestyle has been basically the same. So it's not working. Your influence is not being a positive influence. So if we can find a way to have a positive influence, there's a greater opportunity that there will be change.
Now, that's good. So you have the environment determines my state of mind as a myth. People cannot change. And what's another one?
Another one is that in a really troubled marriage, I say to myself, I only have two options. I can stay here and be miserable the rest of my life. And a lot of Christians will take this approach. I married them. I'm going to stick in here.
It's my duty.
And it's my duty, and I'm going to be miserable the rest of my life. That's one option. The other option is I can get out of this and hope that I'll find happiness somewhere else down the line. And that those are my only two options. And that's a myth. There's a third option, and that's what this book is all about. And that is I can choose, with the help of God and the guidance of what other people have learned, I can be a positive influence in this marriage, and I can create a different atmosphere in this marriage, which may eventually lead to my spouse changing their behavior.
And in a moment, we're going to get into those different descriptions, the unfaithful spouse, some of the other things that cause marriages to break. But in that context, you really have to break the habit of what you want out of this marriage, right?
Yeah.
That's hard to do, Gary.
Well, all of us want to be happy in a marriage, that we get married, we think we're going to be happy. We were happy when we got married because we were in love.
Right.
But as you know, we come down off that in high experience after about 2 years, and our differences emerge because we're human, and humans think differently, and humans feel differently. And so we get into an argumentative state, and then it kind of goes downhill from there. But the kind of things we're talking about in this book, as you mentioned earlier, are really heavy, heavy-duty situations. So I think the first aspect of reality living is that I am responsible for my own attitude.
So these are the truths of what's real.
Yeah, these are the things we try to apply in each of these situations, whether it's a workaholic husband or a husband that won't work or whatever, is that I'm responsible for my attitude in this. And I can be negative, which is my natural response, and I can be critical of them for the behavior that they have, or I can choose to have a positive attitude and look for something good in their behavior that I can affirm.